Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jeannie and today I'll be showing you how I create nail extensions using iGel Beauty's Diamond Sculpture Gel as well as some paper forms. If you aren't familiar with the Diamond Sculpture Gel, it's actually iGel's version of polygel, so it is actually a product that's a hybrid of gel and acrylic, and it's a lot thicker consistency, so it makes it a lot easier to work with in my opinion. The other products you'll need for this process is a brush. So this is the sculpture gel brush from iGel Beauty. So one end is the spatula and the other is a gel brush to move around your product. I'll be using paper nail forms to create my extensions. You could also use the plastic dual forms. You'll need some isopropyl alcohol. 90% or more is better, so I've got the 99% here, as well as you'll need a lamp because it is a gel product. So I've got my hybrid light UV LED lamp, as well as some gel base. I went ahead and applied the hydrator and primer, so now I'm going to go in with my paper forms. So these are the forms from iGel Beauty, and just what I'm doing is that center sticker there, it pops out, so I'm going to stick that to the back of the form, and that's going to give me more reinforced structure at the tip. That top right there, you don't have to tear at the perforated line. I prefer it torn. And then I also like to pre-pinch my ends. So I'm just kind of bending it a little bit at the middle where you see that line. And then once I've got it where I want it, I'm going to put the ends together and they're going to stick together for that pre-pinched look. So once I've got that all set, and sorry, I go a little bit out of frame with this. I'm not used to trying to do this on camera, but I try to line it up with my natural nail. So I slip it under my natural nail and I try to make sure that the line in the middle of the form lines up to the middle of my nail and that it's flush. So the form, we don't want it pointing down or pointing up. You want it as flush to your natural nail as possible. And then once you've got that in place, you're going to secure it by just attaching that to your finger. And it's really that easy. It does take a while. There is a learning curve to paper forms, but once you get the hang of it, I find it pretty easy. And that's actually my preferred method to using dual forms. Generally, when I do paper forms, I usually do one finger at a time. So I'll apply the paper form to my one finger. I'll do my sculpture gel, cure it, and then remove the form and then move on to the next finger. It does take a little bit longer. So for this video, I decided I would apply the forms to all 5 of my fingers and then start my process. And that refreshed my memory on why I do one finger at a time. So yes, it may take longer, but becomes so difficult to pick up things and manage things and move things around when you have these large, long forms on all your fingers. So really personal preference on what you do, but for me, I probably will stick to one finger at a time. After I secured all my forms, I went ahead and applied a layer of gel base and cured that for 30 seconds. So now we're going to go in with our sculpture gel. So in that little dish, I have my isopropyl alcohol. So I just dipped my spatula in there, and then I'm going to take a small bead of that sculpture gel and just apply that to my nail. So you can see it just stays in that bead. So what I'll do to move around the product is you want to dip your brush into the alcohol, or you could use slip solution, and you want to make sure your brush isn't too wet and it isn't too dry. So you really have to find that sweet spot of liquid on your brush. So you'll see that's why when I dip my brush into the alcohol, I'm wiping it on the paper towel to get off any of that excess alcohol. So once I've got that, I will start moving around the product. So you can see I can just easily move it around. So I've got the right amount of liquid on my brush. And I don't know why, I was so intimidated by sculpture gel, poly gel for the longest time. And then when I finally bit the bullet and tried it, I absolutely loved it because I just found it so easy to work with. So there are definitely pros and cons to using sculpture gel, but I love it because one, it's a gel product, it's a hybrid gel, so you can take your time. It's not going to set until you cure it in your lamp. So you can really take your time in doing whatever you want to forming it, to smoothing it out. So you're not limited by that. And then two, it's a thicker product. So that's really a plus and a minus of the product. So it's thicker. So wherever you move it, it stays. So you don't have to worry about it running on you, flooding your sidewalls and cuticles. Where you put it, it stays, which I think is really great. But on the con side, it also means that it doesn't self-level. So you either have to just work on applying it as smoothly as possible, or you have to go in after the fact and do a little more filing to smooth it out. So it's really, your choice on what you want to do. Like, I always try to make it as smooth as possible, but I don't go for perfect because I know that I'll end up doing filing after I've got my sculpture gel cured. So what you see here is, because it doesn't move, it stays where you place it. I at first thought I would just form it into my almond shape that I wanted, and that way I didn't have to file it into shape. But I didn't really like the way it looked. So you can do that, but for me, I am a little bit messy when I use dual forms, whether it's sculpture gel, whether it's builder gel, where I kind of just apply a whole bunch and then I will file it the way I want it, because I always find it's easier to remove product than it is to add more product after the fact. So I just decided to add a little more sculpture gel just to make sure I have enough structure, because if it's too thin, you don't want your extension to break. But I am just going to end up just making it into a square shape, just because I prefer to file my nails into shape rather than forming them, because I'm not the best at forming a shape, but I do have practice in filing into shape. And what you'll see is on the paper forms, you see those lines at the free edge. I actually use those lines to kind of measure and make sure my nails are even. So whatever line I choose to go to extend my nail out to is what that line that I'll use for all my nails. So I think I went out to either the third or fourth line on the forms. So I did the same for all my fingers. So it helps me keep them a little more even. So I'm going to keep working with this finger to smooth it out as much as possible, and anytime my brush gets a little too dry, I'll dip it back into the alcohol and wipe off the excess on my paper towel, and then keep moving it around a little bit more. When I get to a place where I think it's good enough for a first layer, I will actually cure that in my lamp for a full 60 seconds. After my first layer is fully cured, I'm going to go in with a second layer because I feel like it's a little bit too thin. So you can see here, because the sculpture gel is a bit thicker, I'm struggling a little bit to get it out of the tube. So when you experience that, it could be because it's too cold in your room or outside or whatever, because it will get thicker the colder it is. So you can warm it up a bit, so you can, stick it in your bra. Body heat will warm it up, or you can just stick it in a cup of warm to hot water and let that sit for a little bit, and that'll help loosen it up and get it out of the tube a little bit easier. I was just too lazy to get up and get a cup of warm water, but just know that it'll help with the thickness in getting that out. So here I am, I just applied that little bit extra to my index finger, and I'm just trying to smooth that out a bit, and then dipping in the alcohol when needed, when my sculpture gel starts sticking to my brush, just to make sure I get it as smooth and even as possible, but it doesn't have to be perfect because I will do filing to even that out. I will also add the one thing I forgot to do that I could have done is after I'm done with my first layer, once I've got a really good structure on my nail, I could actually remove the paper form and just continue on that way because it's sturdy enough to where, oh, do you see that? I just spilled my almost entire container of alcohol. I don't know, I was just having an off night when I was doing this and I couldn't believe I just spilled all that alcohol. But anyway, as I was saying, I could have just removed the paper form and continued on with my second layer. I don't know, I just wasn't thinking. So I will eventually do that after I finish with my middle finger. I remove both forms. So just keep that in mind as well because it's just difficult to navigate and move around with these long forms on your fingers. So make your life a little bit easier and remove the form. As far as using alcohol for your slip solution when you're working with sculpture gel, 90% or higher is better because not only does it make it easier to move around your sculpture gel, if you work with something that's a lower percentage alcohol, meaning it's got more water diluted in it, you could experience cloudiness. So it may not matter as much because I'm using a baby pink, but if you're working with clear sculpture gel and have a lower percentage alcohol and you notice cloudiness, it could very well be because of your percentage of alcohol. So try a higher percentage of alcohol, as well as if it's too cold in your room, if the thermostat is too cold, you keep your thermostat at a lower temperature, or if it's just wintertime and it's cold outside, you could experience cloudiness as well. So those are some things to keep in mind. And you don't have to use isopropyl alcohol as your slip solution. You do have other options. So I know some nail companies do sell something called slip solution. What it actually is, I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm not sure whether it's alcohol mixed with something else or something else altogether. I'm not really sure about that, but there is something called slip solution that you can buy, which, I just find it easier because you can get alcohol on Amazon or the grocery store, so it's just easier and more readily available. But I will also mention, I know some people also use gel base as their slip solution. So they just apply that little bit of sculpture gel onto their nail and then they'll apply a thin layer of gel base on top, and that works as their slip solution to move it around. Personally, I haven't tried it and I don't plan on trying it just because I like to limit my exposure to gel because I don't want to form a gel allergy, and I'm just afraid using it as my slip solution, I may accidentally get more gel base on my skin than I intend to. So I'd rather use alcohol or slip solution or whatever, but that is an option as well that you can use. What I should have mentioned earlier is if you're newer to my channel, I am a DIY nail enthusiast, so I am not a licensed nail tech. So what I share with you on my channel is my personal experience, what I find works best for me, and what I find through research. I like to read about the processes, what I'm doing, what works well, what doesn't. So I like to share that knowledge, but it's from my own personal experience and it's not from a licensed nail tech perspective. I don't know why I left this in, probably to show you why I only do one nail form at a time, but I kept moving around my hand, and when I moved my hand, my ring finger kept hitting my wet sculpture gel on my middle finger and leaving a crease in it, so I kept having to adjust it, and this happened like 2 or 3 times. It was ridiculous. So what you see me doing here is just trying to smooth it back out again, because I don't know what was wrong with me. Like I said, I was having an off night. So I'm going to finish up my middle finger. I'll speed up the rest of my fingers because it is a little bit repetitive, and then I'll be back. Once I'm done creating my extensions and everything's fully cured, sculpture gel does leave a tacky layer. So I want to make sure I'm removing that prior to filing and buffing. So I'm just taking some of that rubbing alcohol that I used as my slip solution and I'm wiping off my nails. And that's because I don't want to gunk up my file with that tacky layer. So now we're back all filed and buffed and I've got my favorite almond shape back. So now I'm just going to top coat it. So finishing off my mani as usual, I'm using my Candy Skincare Cuticle Oil and I'm just going to rehydrate my skin because they do take a beating throughout this process. And here we are with the finished look. What do you think? Have you tried sculpture gel or polygel? Would you try it? I just find it a lot easier to do extensions with this because it is thicker and it doesn't move on you. But there is a surprise. So this sculpture gel is a glow in the dark, and just look at this glow. I mean, it is bright and it is beautiful. I love it, especially like the really surprise ones where, you know, I think you kind of see a neon color, you wouldn't be surprised if you glowed, but to see a baby pink glow like this bright purple is just so cool. And you know me, I'm like a kid when it comes to glows. So anyway, I just had to show you that. I didn't mention it before because I wanted it to be a surprise, and I just think it's so fun. So anyway, back to the sculpture gel. I just love using it. I think it's got so many purposes. So you can just do a natural overlay on your nails. You don't have to build an extension. You can do extensions with it. My favorite way to use the clear sculpture gel is to actually apply my Pro Gel tips with it. So I think it's such a quick and easy way to apply my Pro Gel tips. So I also love it for that. So it has many purposes. If you haven't tried it, I would highly recommend it. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope I answered any questions that you may have. But if I didn't, if you have any more questions, let me know down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It lets me know to continue creating content like this, and also helps YouTube recommend me to others. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I upload content every Monday and Thursday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.